All right, what is up, lads and lass? I apologize for the chalky shirt. I just came back from a log session. Check out my shorts. I hit a 122 kilo log off the blocks as I'm getting ready to try and break the African log record in the under 80 kilo division, which is 120 kilos. This video is going to be about high frequency training for strength training more generally, but also specifically for powerlifting. I got a question about this from the comment section. So, bro, this is for you. I hope this helps. I want to break high frequency down into two main categories. Now, there are more than these. You can describe more types of high frequency programs, but I'm going to break them down into two main categories, the DUP category and the Shaco category. Before I get into that though, I want to define what exactly I mean when I say high frequency. So not all lifts are created equal. Some are way more fatiguing than others. You can do some way more often than you can do others. Deadlifts, for example, if you have any level of strength, doing deadlifts more than once a week heavy is not going to happen. And for that reason, I put deadlift as anything more than once a week I'm already going to call high frequency. Now, some of you might say, well, you can do it pretty easily twice a week. I disagree. When you get pretty strong, yes, you can do a kind of heavier day and then a light day or throw in a variation. But I think for most people, when you get to a level of strength that is reasonable, even that really goes out the window, and you get a lot more benefit from doing even kind of extending your deadlifts, your heavy deadlift sessions to once every second week. Some people can get away with heavy deadlifts once per week. Overhead presses, we're talking anywhere 3 times and up per week. I would consider high frequency. It's very easy on both overhead press and bench press to go relatively heavy twice a week. 3 times and up, we're talking, that is what I would call high frequency. Squats is a weird one because it depends on how you squat and your kind of leverages for the movement. Anything more than twice a week is definitely high frequency, but there are some people who can squat twice a week just fine. Most people could squat twice a week relatively hard and not have a problem. Some people can squat 3 times a week hard, have no problem. They're more rare, but generally speaking, yeah, anything over twice a week, I would definitely call high frequency. Now, understanding that, I'm going to go into our 2 example programs here. I want to preface it with this though, saying that understand that these types of progressions that I'm going to talk about, for example, in DUP, do not apply equally to all lifts. Do not go try and run something like this for your deadlift. That's not a good idea. You're going to run yourself into the ground. If you want to run it on OHP or bench, it'll probably work just fine. Squats, maybe, right? What I'm saying here is not all these progressions are for any lift. They're just an example for things that you'll commonly see in DUP programs. So, getting into the actual topic, under high frequency in the DUP category, I'm going to put these into 2 kind of main subcategories of DUP. The first is a very common sort of variation that you'll see of DUP, where you do something like triples on day 1, 5s on day 2, sets of 8 on day 3. You can see these be in sort of percentage bases, like triples at 80, 5s at 70, 8s at 60, and then it progresses very linearly. Or you can, for example, see some type of RPE variation where you're changing the RPE that you use on the different sets, different rep ranges, so to speak. So week 1, you might have RPE 8 on the triples, 6 on the 5s, and 7 on the 8s, and then it rotates. Week 2, you might have 6s on the triples, 8s on the 5s, 7s on the 5s, RPE 8 on the 8s, and that way it rotates and it allows you to keep going for longer. The other type of DUP program that you get most of the time is the kind of light, medium, heavy type program. The first example here, 5x5 on medium. Medium is like a volume day, so to speak. A 2x5 on a lighter weight on the light day, and then a heavy set of 5. This is the Texas method, right? This is one of Mark Ripperto's programs, his follow-up to starting strength. You can get different variations of this, for example, where on the medium day you're doing sort of hypertrophy work. Let's just go 3 sets of 10. The light day, you're doing something like speed work, right? 8 sets of 3. And on the heavy day, you're working up to a heavy set of 5, a heavy set of 3, a heavy single, etc. This looks, even though it's not the same format, a lot more like something like conjugate, right? Where your light day is speed work instead of just being a light recovery day. This is generally how you see DUP programs structured. Now, the thing about DUP programs, most of the time, is that yes, they work. In fact, they work very quickly. The problem is that it's not always the case, but on most types of DUP programs, I find you can't continue the progression for very long, right? You can run a program like this, especially these first two, for 6, maybe 9 weeks, and then you tend to hit a wall. And the reason why is because things get very heavy very quickly. Now, something synergistic does occur where you do these multiple rep ranges at the same time, and you get a very big boost in your strength in a short period of time. But I have found that you top out pretty quickly because there's no real way to progress from here except waiving the intensity and increasing the weight. Going medium, light, heavy, I found you can run for a little bit longer. The more sort of conjugate style, you can run for quite a long time. But again, these programs have a shelf life because there's only so many dials you can turn when you're already dealing with 3 times a week frequency. The other type of high frequency program that I want to talk about, and this is really the authentic powerlifting program, right? This is Shaiko style programming. Shaiko, for those of you who don't know, was a Russian Olympic lifting coach who then became the primary coach of the Russian powerlifting team. I wrote down an example of one workout, just one workout on a Monday, right, from a Shaiko template. You're looking at squats, sets at 50, 60, 70, 80%. You go over to bench, right, 50, 60, 70, 80%, and then you go back to squatting, 50, 60, 70%. If you look at these set and rep schemes, none of these sets by themselves are particularly heavy and difficult. Right, doing 5 sets of doubles at 80 is not a particularly hard set. Doing even 6 sets of triples on bench at 80% is not that hard of a set. What makes Shaiko programming hard is the total amount of work that you accumulate during a workout, and more importantly, during an entire cycle. Right, this is where the week-to-week progression becomes important. Now, if you look at a at a kind of just bird's eye view with this thing, you're not really going to know immediately what progression is going on. It's not obvious like something like this where, we're doing 80, 70, 60. Next week we do 82.5, 72.5, 62.5. Or, I'm just going to cycle through RPEs. What you have to look at is total tonnage accrued, right? And how he rates this is kind of in small workouts, medium workouts, and large-sized workouts. And if you look then at the progression, this isn't completely accurate, and it is slightly different depending on the program, but just to give you a broad idea, you might have something that goes, week 1 you have a small workout, a medium workout, and another small workout. Week 2, a medium, small, and medium. Week 3, a medium, heavy, medium, large, small workout. And that way, what you're doing over a period of time is playing with the tonnage on a weekly basis to drive growth. And what the difference is between something like DUP and Shaiko, all high frequency programs, one of the large benefits is that you get a hell of a lot of practice at the main lifts, right? You get very good at the main lifts technically because you practice them more often, but that is especially true in Shaiko programs because all of the work is very submaximal, but there's a hell of a lot of volume that you accrue over a training cycle. And so Shaiko programs are more like training in any other sport that isn't lifting weights. It's about practice, 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 and perfecting your technical skill at the lift and your ability to move the weight well at heavier tonnages, but very far away from failure. Whereas in your regular DUP cycles, you're going to see pretty close to failure pretty regularly, obviously depending on what you run, but a lot of the time that is what you're going to see. So what are the kind of, now that we've distinguished what I think are the two kind of main types of high frequency training that you can look at, what are the benefits of each of these and why would you do them? Well, if you want a quick boost in your 1 rep max over, let's say, a 6-week period, a DUP type of program is going to work very well. You're going to get very quick boosts in your strength, but understand that most of the time this is not a sustainable way to train long term, especially not if you're trying to maintain or eat in a calorie deficit. You want to be eating a lot of food to run this type of program, especially if you want to get the most out of it in a short period of time. You want to be in a calorie surplus for this type of thing. If you are looking at a longer term program that is high frequency, specialized for powerlifting, that is going to make you a squat, bench, and deadlift machine, you do Shaco. Shaco is not something you do for a 6-week program. Shaco is a way of life, guys. Okay, it's a deep ethical question about your value as a human being to do this type of program, because you are busting your head into a wall, not because it's hard, but it's boring. This is the main feature of these types of programs. It's a whole lot of submaximal sets. It's a volume of work that you do that none of you are going to be used to, and that's what's going to grow you. But it's mundane. It's boring. It's squat, bench, deadlift, and a couple of accessories at the end. Now, having said all of this, I want to preface this by saying I don't think beginners or really even intermediates should be touching these. And there's a very specific reason for that. It's not that these wouldn't work for intermediates. Shaco has intermediate programs. You can find DUP programs work very well for early intermediates. And to be fair, most of these types of DUP programs are designed for your kind of mid-intermediate people who are out of novice gains, out of early intermediate, and they want to get to the advanced strength levels. The reason why I wouldn't suggest this for most people, even in the early intermediate category, is because my experience is that most guys nowadays who want to get strong have the same problem, which is that they don't have a wide enough base. They aren't big enough, muscular enough, and have enough experience with variety to justify these types of hyper-specialized programs. Does that mean you won't get bigger running a DUP split or even a Shaco program? No, you might. You likely will on the DUP split. On the Shaco program, heat programs and accessories, you will probably get bigger. But if you look, for example, at Shaco program, if you look at the way that in the Russian and the Chinese systems they deal with young athletes before they ever get to this, they do a hell of a lot of variety. They do lifts, body weight exercises. They turn the gym into play to give these people, to build them a base with experience in a ton of variety of different types of exercise before they get to this hyper-specialized type of training. Similarly with DUP, because you're doing high frequency on the main lifts, you don't have space for a lot of accessories. You won't. And so what that means is that you don't get to develop in the weaknesses that you may have. You don't get to develop to choose movements that are going to challenge you in different ways. You don't get that amount of variety that you would if you run a much more simple program where you're doing a lift maybe once or twice a week and then have a lot of variety of accessories. So my suggestion is unless you are already well muscled and already reasonably strong, do not touch either of these two. If you're a strong guy, especially if you're already advanced and you're chasing after, a specific total and you need to get better at the lifts, do Shaco. If you're a later intermediate guy who's already big but you need to get stronger, look at some type of DUP split. But until you get to that point, and even then, guys, you don't need these types of programs to get better. They're just options for you then, opportunities for you then. Until you get to that point, my suggestion is pick a more general program with a simple progression right? That with a simple progression, with more accessories, so that you broaden your base of exercises, focus on a more linear style of periodization where you start by focusing on accruing volume, right? Getting bigger, right? Working in the 12s, the 10s, where none of modern strength, where most modern strength people don't want to be, even the 15s, right? Where you peel that back as you go and then later on get to the singles, because that is going to give you much more benefit and teach you much better habits than doing this, especially this. The DUP programs, especially those that run off RPE or percentages, the types where it's like sets of 3, sets of 5, sets of 8, I have found can cause overuse issues very quickly, especially on pressing movements. Your elbows go very quickly, your shoulders start aching, your knees start going. That's not going to be the case for everybody, but for most people, you should not be here yet. Again, if you fall into one of the categories I explained, sure, jump in. But most of you do not need to be here yet. So, if you want a much more appropriate, what I think is an appropriate program for long-term growth, I have posted a free program called the Most Underrated Program for Powerlifting. One of my older videos, go check that out, run that program. That's essentially, it's my favorite way of running programs. What it's going to do is volumize through different rep ranges. So you're going to start, for example, in the first week at 60%, 3 sets of 12, and all you're going to do is add a set each week. Then you drop back, sets of 8. You're going to add sets each week. You're going to drop back, etc., etc. What that type of more general program is going to do is teach you good habits, right? Teach you how to eat, how to rest, how to make sure you're ready for workouts, to warm up properly, to give you a good idea and teach you when you should be deloading, when you should be changing around things in your program. You don't have that wiggle room in programs like this. You don't, because you have this high frequency. If you have a bad day and you go too hard on your day of triples, you're screwed by the time you get to the 5s. You have a more general program where you're, benching twice a week, maybe. That's not the case because you have way more time before you get to your next bench session. It's also much more easier on a regular program to bench twice a week, because you could bench twice a week or you could throw in a variation to work on a weak point. Your options are much more limited on this type of program. Anyway, guys, so I hope you enjoyed my 2 cents. I know this gets a little rambly. I will get better at this as time goes on. But that's my kind of summary and synapses of high-frequency training, who I think should touch this, and what I think most of you should actually be doing, which is just focusing on the basics. Guys, I will always say this. The most important thing is not which program you choose. It's how you run the program that you chose. What I mean by that is people love to get hyper-obsessed with numbers and what's on the page, when they should be obsessed with all the other little variables. If you have a program with a decent progression that isn't written by an idiot, it's going to work as long as you eat appropriately, sleep appropriately, and do the appropriate amount of recovery that you need to in between sessions, and come into the session with the necessary focus and intensity to make sure that you can hit that session hard and progress the next time you're at the gym. And also with the appropriate concern for the fact that not every week you're going to hit a PR, that you're running this program for a period of time to be able to do the best that you can at the end. That's the approach that you need to be taking to your programs, regardless of what you run. So this is not a special Hail Mary solution. Understand that it is just another way to train. It does work. It has its positives and its negatives. But this isn't some holy grail that is going to take you from a 120 kilo to a 200 kilo squat, right? This doesn't turn you into a world record holding powerlifter. This doesn't even turn you necessarily into a world record holding powerlifter. They each have their purpose and their use, but they only work like any other program if you run them appropriately. So, that being said, I will see you guys next time. Cheers.